You think hippos are cute, calm, and harmless? Think again. Imagine being stranded in the wild, where these massive animals become your biggest threat. Could you survive? This is the story of Hungry. Stay until the end, and don't forget to subscribe for more horror movie recaps and ending explanations.
The movie opens inside a lively bar, where live music fills the room and everyone seems to be having a great time. People are dancing, laughing, and enjoying the atmosphere, creating the perfect setting for a relaxing night out. It's here that we're introduced to our main characters, Sistine and Hannah, two close friends who simply want to take a break from their busy lives and enjoy a few drinks together. As they're settling into the evening, Sistine suddenly receives a phone call from her office. From the conversation, it's clear that something is wrong. Her boss sounds frustrated and doesn't even give her much of a chance to explain before ending the call. Feeling confused and disappointed, Sistine returns to the table, trying not to let the moment ruin the night. While they were at the table talking, they're approached by Rodrigo, a friendly tour guide promoting a wildlife tour through the Louisiana Bayou. He explains that visitors can get an up-close look at alligators, turtles, colorful birds, and the unique beauty of the wetlands. To make the offer even more appealing, he's running a special discount. Hannah is immediately excited by the idea and encourages Sistine to join the tour. At first, Sistine isn't interested, mainly because she's distracted by everything that's happened. But after finding out Hannah has already paid for both of them, she decides to go along with the plan. Rodrigo tells them he'll pick them up at 11 a.m. the following morning before wishing them a good night. Once Rodrigo leaves, Hannah reveals that the tour was actually meant to be a surprise. That's when Sistine finally opens up about what's been bothering her. She admits that she has just lost her job. She's devastated because she genuinely believed all of her hard work would eventually pay off. Instead, everything changed with a single phone call. It's a small but important moment because it shows that Sistine is already carrying emotional baggage before the real adventure even begins. Rather than letting her friend dwell on the bad news, Hannah does her best to lift her spirits. She reminds Sistine that one setback doesn't define her future and encourages her to enjoy the rest of the night. Sometimes, taking a step away from life's problems is exactly what people need before facing a new challenge. Taking Hannah's advice, the two friends decide to put their worries aside. They order another round of drinks, laugh together, and spend the rest of the evening dancing and making the most of the moment. Unfortunately for them, what starts as a simple getaway is about to become an unforgettable journey that neither of them could have imagined. The next morning, right on schedule, Rodrigo arrives at 11 a.m. to pick everyone up for the wildlife tour. Sistine and Hannah aren't the only ones joining the adventure. Along the way, the rest of the group introduces themselves. There's Sally, her father Tim, and Sally's young son, Mikey. Just as they're about to leave, one last guest rushes over to the van. She apologizes for almost being late and introduces herself as Dion, completing the group. Before heading deep into the bayou, they make a stop at Gator Joe's cabin, a rustic shop filled with souvenirs, tourist shirts, jackets, hats, and outdoor gear. While Sistine and Hannah browse through the merchandise, Sally and Mikey become curious and wander around the cabin. Their curiosity leads them into a display room filled with preserved animal specimens and wildlife exhibits. Among the collection, one enormous skull immediately catches their attention. Fascinated by its size, they begin guessing what kind of animal it could have belonged to. Just then, Joe, the owner of the cabin and Rodrigo's boss, walks into the room. Seeing everyone's curiosity, he explains that the massive skull came from a hippo he encountered in Africa back in 1998. As an experienced hunter and outdoorsman, Joe begins sharing stories about how powerful and unpredictable hippos can be. According to him, despite their calm appearance, they're among the most dangerous animals in the wild when they feel threatened. A few moments later, Sistine and Hannah join the group. Looking at the giant skull, Sistine admits she has always thought hippos were cute and harmless animals. Joe immediately disagrees, replying that, in his opinion, the only cute hippo is a dead hippo. The comment catches everyone off guard. Some of the group exchange awkward smiles, assuming Joe is simply exaggerating or trying to scare the tourists before the trip begins. But the movie cleverly uses this conversation to plant an important clue. Joe's warning may sound extreme at first, yet it's quietly preparing both the characters and the audience for the danger that lies ahead. Without saying too much, the film reminds us that appearances can be deceiving, especially in the wild. With that, Joe walks away, leaving the group to brush off his words as nothing more than an old hunter's opinion. Little do they know, they'll soon discover just how serious his warning really was. With everyone finally on board, Rodrigo gets the tour underway. Before starting the engine, he asks if anyone needs a life jacket. Sally and Dion both raise their hands, and Rodrigo hands them one each before giving a quick safety briefing. He reminds everyone to stay seated while the boat is moving and assures them they'll have a safe and memorable trip through the bayou. As the boat glides through the water, the group can't help but admire the beautiful scenery. Cameras and phones come out as everyone records the peaceful wetlands, excited to see the wildlife. Rodrigo tells them the highlight of the tour will be meeting Big Ben, the largest alligator in the area. Thanks to a tracking device attached to the animal, he's confident they'll find it. After cruising through the bayou for several minutes, Rodrigo gradually slows the boat. He checks the tracking device and tells the group that Big Ben should be somewhere nearby, but strangely, there's no sign of the massive alligator. Hoping to lure him out, Rodrigo tosses a few snacks into the water and waits. Everyone watches the surface in anticipation, cameras ready, but nothing happens. Thinking Big Ben may have wandered off, Rodrigo decides to continue a little farther. Moments later, they finally find him, but not in the way anyone expected. Big Ben is lying motionless on a patch of sand. The giant alligator is clearly dead, and from the way the remains are scattered, it's obvious something incredibly powerful brought him down. The sight leaves everyone speechless, turning what was supposed to be an exciting tour into a deeply unsettling discovery. Rodrigo is completely baffled. Having spent years navigating these waters, he knows Big Ben was the undisputed giant of the bayou. There shouldn't be another predator capable of taking down an animal of that size. If something was strong enough to do this, then it means a much larger and far more dangerous creature is hiding somewhere nearby. At this point, the movie quietly shifts from an adventure story into a survival thriller, letting both the characters and the audience realize that something isn't right beneath the calm waters. As they begin heading back, the atmosphere changes completely. Without warning, something powerful strikes the underside of the boat. At first, everyone assumes they hit a log, but then it happens again and again. Each impact is stronger than the last, sending waves through the boat and leaving the passengers frightened and confused. Before anyone can react, one final, massive hit flips the boat completely over, throwing everyone into the water. Despite the panic, Tim quickly takes charge. He shouts for everyone to stay calm and climb onto the overturned boat, while those closest to nearby trees pull themselves onto the branches. The advice likely saves lives, because staying out of the water suddenly becomes everyone's top priority. Rodrigo is the last person still swimming. As the others reach out and help pull him onto the overturned boat, they notice a deep wound on his shoulder. Whatever struck him left behind a serious injury, suggesting the creature has incredibly powerful jaws. The group has survived the accident, but it's now painfully clear that they're no longer dealing with an ordinary wildlife tour. They're stranded in the middle of the bayou with something dangerous lurking beneath the surface. Realizing that Rodrigo is losing a dangerous amount of blood, Sally quickly steps in. Drawing on her medical knowledge, she explains that the bleeding has to be stopped immediately. Otherwise, he could become too weak to survive. The fastest option is to cauterize the wound by sealing it with something extremely hot. Rodrigo remembers there's an emergency flare box on the boat that can be used to create enough heat, but after the accident, it's floating just out of reach in the water. With the mysterious creature still lurking below the surface, no one wants to risk going after it. Without hesitating, Sistine volunteers. Carefully climbing along the nearby tree branches, she slowly makes her way toward the floating box. Every movement is tense because one mistake could send her straight into the water. After a nerve-wracking climb, she finally reaches the flare box and tosses it back to Tim. Using one of the flares, Tim heats the blade of his knife until it's red hot. Rodrigo braces himself, knowing what's about to happen. The moment Tim presses the heated blade against Rodrigo's shoulder, Rodrigo lets out a loud scream as the intense heat seals the wound. It's an incredibly painful solution, but it successfully slows the bleeding and gives him a better chance of surviving. Hours begin to pass, and the group takes a moment to assess their situation. The boat is completely unusable, leaving them stranded in the middle of the bayou. Worse still, whatever attacked them is still circling beneath the water, making any attempt to swim for safety almost impossible. Trying to give everyone hope, Rodrigo explains that if he doesn't return by 7 p.m., his boss, Joe, will know something is wrong and come looking for them. For now, their only option is to stay where they are and wait for rescue. It isn't a perfect plan, but it's the safest one they have. Tim reminds everyone not to let their guard down. Believing the higher they stay, the safer they'll be, he tells Mikey to climb farther up the tree. The movie does a good job at showing how fear affects everyone differently. While some are trying to stay calm, others are beginning to panic, and even the smallest mistake could have devastating consequences. As Mikey climbs, he accidentally grabs a weak branch that starts to crack beneath his weight. Seeing her son in danger, Sally instinctively reaches toward him. In the confusion, she loses her balance and falls into the water. Almost immediately, everyone remembers why Sally had asked for a life jacket at the beginning of the tour. She isn't a strong swimmer. Without thinking twice, Sistine dives into the water to help her. It's an incredibly risky decision, but she refuses to leave Sally behind. As she's helping Sally back toward the overturned boat, Hannah suddenly spots movement in the water and desperately shouts that the creature is heading straight for them. Working together, Sistine manages to push Sally onto the overturned boat just in time. But before anyone can catch their breath, the creature crashes into the nearby tree with incredible force. The impact shakes the branches violently, causing Hannah to lose her grip and fall into the water. Everyone watches in horror as Hannah desperately swims toward a lower tree branch. Sistine reaches down, grabbing Hannah's arm and pulling with everything she has. The strain is so intense that Sistine accidentally dislocates her shoulder, forcing her to let go. The injury leaves her in agony, making it impossible to pull Hannah to safety by herself. Watching helplessly, Tim can't stand by any longer. Sally begs him not to go, warning that it's far too dangerous. But knowing someone has to act, Tim quietly kisses Sally on the forehead, gives Mikey one last reassuring look, and climbs into the water carrying his rifle. It's a heartbreaking moment because Tim knows exactly what he's risking. His only goal is to save Hannah and give everyone else a chance to survive. Sadly, he never gets the opportunity. Within seconds of entering the water, the enormous creature strikes from below, pulling Tim beneath the surface before anyone can react. His sacrifice leaves the group devastated as Sally and Mikey break down in tears, powerless to help. Meanwhile, Hannah manages to reach another tree and begins climbing as quickly as she can. For a brief moment, it looks like she might actually escape. But then, the movie reveals the true threat. An enormous hippo suddenly bursts from the water with astonishing speed and power, reaching Hannah before she can climb to safety. In an instant, her escape comes to an end, confirming that Joe's earlier warning about hippos wasn't an exaggeration after all. The film completely changes the audience's expectations, turning an ordinary wildlife tour into a desperate fight for survival against an animal few people would ever expect. As the chaos settles, Sistine can only watch in shock. In the span of a few terrifying moments, she has lost her closest friend, someone she considered more like family than just a friend. From this point on, the group's mission is no longer to finish the tour. It's simply to stay alive long enough for help to arrive. As evening approaches, the survivors are still stranded in the middle of the bayou, clinging to the trees with no safe way to escape. Back at the cabin, Joe realizes something is wrong. Rodrigo should have returned hours ago, so despite the late hour, he decides to head out and search for him. When Joe finally reaches the group, he immediately notices Rodrigo's condition. He's badly injured and has lost a significant amount of blood. The others quickly explain that a giant hippo is trapped in the area with them, but Joe struggles to believe it. To him, the story sounds impossible. Ignoring the warning, Joe tells everyone to get into his boat so they can leave immediately. As the group carefully begins climbing aboard, Dion starts blaming Rodrigo for everything that has happened, arguing that he never should have taken them so far into the bayou. During the heated argument, she accidentally pushes Mikey into the water. Everything happens in an instant. For the first time, the movie fully reveals the enormous hippo that has been hiding beneath the surface. The same creature responsible for Big Ben's fate, as well as Tim and Hannah's deaths, rushes toward the helpless boy before anyone has a chance to react. Sally lets out a heartbreaking cry. Only a few hours earlier, she had both her father and her son by her side. Now, she has lost them both. The film uses this moment to show just how quickly hope can disappear when panic takes over. Realizing the danger is far greater than he expected, Joe orders everyone to stay off the boat. As long as the hippo was still circling nearby, trying to escape would only put them in even greater danger. Nearby, Rodrigo knows his strength is fading. Accepting his condition, he quietly tells Joe that he doesn't think he's going to make it. Wanting to give his friend one final moment of comfort, Joe opens 2 bottles of beer, hands one to Rodrigo, and the two share a silent goodbye before Rodrigo loses consciousness. As Joe scans the water with a tranquilizer gun, hoping for a clear shot at the hippo, Sally suddenly climbs into the water. Everyone watches in disbelief, whispering for her to come back, but she doesn't respond. Instead, she simply floats on the surface, softly singing to herself, overwhelmed by grief after losing the people she loved most. At that very moment, Rodrigo notices movement behind Joe. Using the last of his strength, he warns him that the hippo is directly behind him. Before Joe can react, the massive animal charges from the water, knocking him off balance and injuring his leg. During the struggle, the tranquilizer gun slips from Joe's hands. With his final burst of strength, Rodrigo reaches for the weapon, takes careful aim, and fires. The tranquilizer hits its target, causing the hippo to retreat into the water, giving the exhausted survivors a brief moment to catch their breath. Believing the tranquilizer has weakened the animal, Joe tells everyone it's finally safe to get back on the boat. He calls out to Rodrigo, but there's no response. Dion quietly tells Joe that Rodrigo is gone. Looking around at everything that's happened, she breaks down, saying almost everyone is dead and only she and Sistine are left. Joe comes up with a plan. He tells Sistine and Dion to distract the hippo while he climbs onto the boat. However, the animal refuses to leave the area. It continues circling the water, watching their every move. Realizing he won't make it safely, Joe changes the plan and asks Sistine to swim for the boat instead. Despite the risk, Sistine dives into the water, reaches the boat, and successfully climbs aboard. She quickly helps Dion and Joe on board, and the three finally manage to get away from the area. After traveling a short distance, Joe decides they shouldn't continue through the bayou. It's already dark, and navigating unfamiliar waters at night would be far too dangerous. That's when Sistine remembers her camera has a night vision feature. Using it to guide their way, they slowly continue through the darkness. Not long after, they discover an old, abandoned facility sitting deep in the wetlands. From the cages, rusted equipment, and worn-out machinery scattered around, it appears the place was once used to keep and study hippos. The exact purpose of the facility is never fully explained, but it's clear that something significant happened there years ago. The group enters through the back of the building, hoping to find shelter. As they search the old rooms, Sistine hears a faint sound coming from one of the cages. Curious, she follows the noise and discovers a frightened baby hippo trapped beneath a damaged enclosure. Before she can react, the mother hippo suddenly bursts into the area and charges toward her. Sistine barely escapes in time, rushing back inside the building with Joe and Dion. Knowing they can't outrun the animal forever, they desperately search for anything that might help. Dion discovers another exit while Joe and Sistine find an old barrel filled with oil. They pour the oil across the floor, hoping to create a barrier they can ignite if the hippo gets too close. Just then, the hippo crashes into the building. Instead of staying outside, it forces its way inside the abandoned facility and heads straight for Joe. Injured and unable to move quickly, Joe falls to the ground while Sistine and Dion retreat into another room, locking the door behind them. Joe pleads for help, but the hippo reaches him before anyone can intervene, leaving Sistine and Dion completely on their own. For a brief moment, they think the locked room will protect them. But the hippo smashes through the entrance, forcing them to split up. Remembering the escape route she found earlier, Dion jumps down, believing it isn't too far. Unfortunately, the fall is much greater than she expected, leaving her with a serious leg injury and unable to run. Meanwhile, Sistine lights the trail of oil. Within seconds, flames spread across the floor, surrounding the hippo and setting parts of the building ablaze. Taking advantage of the confusion, Sistine escapes and reunites with Dion outside. Unable to carry Dion very far, Sistine helps her into a large open cage, hoping rescuers will notice the growing fire from a distance. It seems like they might finally be safe, but moments later, the hippo emerges from the flames. Though injured, it's still determined to protect its territory. It charges toward the cage, and Dion is unable to escape, leaving Sistine as the only survivor. Terrified and completely alone, Sistine remembers something Joe said earlier, that hippos are extremely territorial, especially when protecting their young. Looking over, she notices the trapped baby hippo is still struggling beneath the damaged cage. Instead of running away, Sistine carefully approaches the frightened calf and lifts the heavy cage off it, setting it free. The mother hippo immediately rushes over to her baby. Rather than attacking Sistine, the animal simply watches as the two reunite before quietly backing away. At that moment, the movie reveals the truth behind the hippo's aggression. It wasn't attacking without reason. The abandoned facility suggests the animals had once been captured and experimented on, and with her baby trapped, the mother had become fiercely protective. While her actions were dangerous, the film also reminds us that wild animals often react out of instinct when they believe their young are in danger. Soon afterward, a rescue helicopter arrives and safely evacuates Sistine from the bayou. And that's how Hungry comes to an end. Survival isn't about being the strongest. It's about refusing to give up, even when everything seems against you. If you enjoyed this recap, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more movie recaps and ending explanations. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.